Let's say you have a great idea for a trading algorithm. You're excited about it and you want to try it out. But unfortunately, your development environment is just not ready. Maybe it's because you haven't installed all the dependencies yet, or maybe you're out of your office and cannot access your work computer, or maybe you just want to play around with a couple of packages without messing up your existing environment. If any of these describe your current situation, you can use a remote dev environment. It's really easy to set up, at least after watching this tutorial, and it's super affordable. In fact, you can get started for free. When it comes to choosing a cloud server provider, what we're looking for is a good balance of the quality and the price. If you're living in the US, I highly recommend using DigitalOcean. Their starting server, which is more than enough for our use case, starts from $5 a month. But if you use my link, you can get started for free. The other cloud provider that I personally recommend and use is Hetzner. Their starting plan offers more resources for the same price. And if you use my link, you will get 20 euros free credits. I already have a Hetzner account, so I'm gonna log in. I will choose the tutorials project. Since I'll be using this server for development, it's actually quite important if the location of the server is closest to me, so that the ping would be lower. For that reason, I choose Germany, but you do whichever is closest to you. Ubuntu 20.04 is exactly the image that I want, so I'm not gonna change that. I will choose the second server plan because for only 60 cents more per month, I will get 2 CPU cores, which I think totally worth it. And now I have to choose the SSH key of my local machine. In your case, if your account is new, you have to generate your SSH keys if you haven't already and add it by choosing the Add SSH Key button. And at the end, I will change the server name. It's not really important what you set here, but I prefer something that I can remember. And now my server should be ready in just a few seconds. For logging into my server, I will be using the terminal app. So I'm gonna copy the IP address from here. And in my terminal, I will type SSH root @ and then paste my IP address. It is asking me whether or not I trust this server, and I do, so I will type yes. And we are in. I will head over to Jesse's documentation, environment setup, Ubuntu, and copy the command for running the installation script for Ubuntu 20.04. I will paste it here and press enter. The installation process is going to take approximately 7 minutes, so I will skip this video and come back when it's done. Alright, at the end, it will ask you whether or not you want to change your default shell to Z shell, and I will type Y to say yes. At this point, you should have everything installed. Just to check, we will type Python 3 -V, and yes, the Python version is correct. Then I'll do the same for pip. And just to show you a list of the packages that this script installed for us, I will type pip list. A couple of useful packages are yfinance, tolib, stats models, seaborn, quantstats, numpy, pandas, and more. Let's create a new Jesse project by copying the command from the documentation website and paste it into the terminal. Then I will cd into my project and create a new environment file by typing cp.env.example.env. By typing ls, I will see all the existing files inside my project. Now remember, this is a remote server, so to edit the files that are in it, typically I have to use an editor that is already installed on that server. By default, the Nano editor is what is installed on these types of server, but the problem with it is that it kind of sucks and is very hard to use. What I like to do instead is to open these files inside an editor that I am already used to, such as PyCharm or VSCode. Fortunately, there's an extension for VSCode called Remote SSH that allows us to do exactly that. So go ahead, download and install VSCode for your platform if you haven't already, and then head over and open the extensions section. And inside the search box, type remote via SSH. Choose the first result and click on the install button. Alright, now that we have the extension installed, it's time to connect to our server. To connect to your server, open the command palette by pressing Command, Shift, and P on Mac, or if you are on Windows, press Shift, Control, and P, and enter SSH, and choose Add New SSH Host. Here I will type SSH root @ and then paste in the IP address of my server and choose the first address for saving the configurations. Everything looks good. I'm gonna open the command palette one more time, and this time choose Connect to Host and choose the IP address of my server. Everything looks good. If I run the ls command, you will see my project files. I'm gonna set into my project. Alright, so now what I want to see is the files of the project inside VS Code's built-in Explorer. To open the project directory inside VS Code, I will click on the Open Folder button and choose My Bot directory and click on the OK button. And I will say, yes, I do trust the authors, which is me. And now I can actually edit the project files that are hosted on the remote server as if they were hosted on my local machine. It feels the same. I can just edit something, press save, and that's it. This looks really good, but one thing that we're still missing is autocompletion. For instance, let's say that I want to use the size to quantity utility function of Jessie. For that, I can say quantity equals utils dot. And now, if we had autocompletion, I would have seen the methods that exist inside the utils module. So to enable autocompletion, I need to install an extension. So I will open the extension panel and look up Python, and IntelliSense is the extension that I want. So I'll go ahead and click on the Install in SSH green button. It should take a few seconds. So now, if I head back to my strategy file, remove the dot and press it again, I will get autocompletion. So I'm gonna choose size to quantity and give it $500, and the entry price would be my current price, which is self.price, and change the quantity from 1 to the quantity variable. So now the editor can understand my Python code and is able to help me write my strategies faster than before. To start Jessie, I will open the built-in terminal inside VS Code and execute Jessie run. The reason I'm getting this error is because by default, the environment file that we created by copying from the example file is set to work with Docker. So for a native environment setup like ours, we need to set Postgres and Redis hosts into localhost. Those values already exist, so all I have to do now is to comment this line and uncomment this one. And I'll do the same for Redis. Alright, let's give this another try. And this time we get the database is not ready. And after 10 seconds, it fails with an authentication error. That's because even though the installer script that we used earlier installed Postgres for us, it didn't create a database, user, and password. So let's head over to the documentation again and navigate into the environment setup. And under Ubuntu, you will find the PostgreSQL section. And I can just copy and paste these commands inside my terminal to create a username, database, and password. So if I execute the command one more time, it should work. Here's something really interesting. Usually when you're using Jessie on a remote server, you must use your server's external IP address in order to access it. But VS Code can do something magical for you. If you run the same command inside VS Code's built-in terminal, it will automatically bind your local IP address into the remote server's external IP. So if inside my local browser I enter localhost with 9000 port, it will open the dashboard of my remote server. And it's really cool because it feels like you're running things on your local machine. And to prove it to you that this dashboard is indeed running on the remote server, I will open the About section, and as you can see, the operating system is Linux, while my local machine is a Mac, so that's how I know this for sure. To install Jupyter Lab, inside the server's terminal, I will execute pip install Jupyter Lab. It's gonna take several seconds, and now we can start using it. To start Jupyter Lab, I will execute Jupyter Python lab. It throws an error saying that running as root is not recommended, but I don't really mind it, so I'm going to skip it by using the allow root flag at the end of it. And just like before, VSCode is going to do its magic thing and bind my local address into the external IP address of the server. So if I copy this URL and paste it into my browser, I should be able to see my Jupyter Lab workflow. Let's create a notebook to execute some Python code. In case you're not already familiar with Jupyter Notebooks, they are great for researching using Python. They allow you to write your code inside separate blocks and see the result right there. To show you a good example of this, inside this notebook, I'm gonna import some candles using Jesse's research module, calculate the 50 period SMA of those candles, and display both of them on a chart. First, I'm gonna import a few libraries that I need. From datetime, import datetime. Import matplotlib.pyplot as plt. This next line is not actually required, but I'm gonna do it just to silence an annoying warning of pandas. Next, I will import the research module from Jesse and also Jesse's technical indicator module. btc candles equal research.getCandles. The first parameter is exchange name, which I will pass Binance. The second one is the symbol, which I will pass BTC USDT. I will pass 30 minutes as the time frame. And then I will pass the starting date. I want 10 days of candles from 10th of November 2021 until 10 days later. If I execute this, I will get an error saying that candle not found in database. The reason I'm getting this error is because I didn't import any candles with Jesse. So I'm gonna create a new terminal window on my VSCode and execute the Jesse run command to run the dashboard. After entering my password and logging in, I'm gonna navigate into the import candles page and choose Binance as my exchange, BTC USDT as my symbol, and change the starting date to 9th of November, which is one day before the actual date that I need, just in case. The importing process is going to take approximately 5 minutes, so I'm going to skip the video and come back when it's done. Alright, now that we have our candles, let's head back to the Jupyter Lab and try executing that block of code one more time. This time I didn't get any errors, which means it worked. Next, I want the moving average of these candles with the period of 50. I can get that by saying ta.sma and pass in my candles, and the next parameter is the period. And because I need all the moving average values and not just the last one, I'm gonna pass sequential equals true. Just to be sure, I'm gonna print the values. I can minimize the output if I don't need it anymore by clicking on the blue line. Inside the chart, I'm going to need only the closing prices and not the whole candles. So I need a NumPy array of the closing prices only. And since Jesse's candles have the type of NumPy array, that's easy to do. Let's print it just to be sure the format is correct and minimize it. Alright, now I have everything that I need for my charts except for timestamps. We already have timestamps in our candles, but they are in the integer format, which isn't what the matplotlib library expects. So I need to convert them into datetime objects. To do that, I'm going to create a Python list named times and then loop through every single candle, create new time date out of those milliseconds timestamps, and store it inside the times list. Let's print it just to make sure the format is correct. And finally, we can display our chart. I'll start by setting the size of my chart a little bigger than the default. And then I will start by plotting BTC close prices. I can do that by saying plt.plot, which is a function. And then I pass my timestamps. and then BTC close prices, and I set the color to orange, and I set the label to BTC. Next, I will plot the 50 moving average by typing plt.plot, and then again I pass timestamps, moving average values, and I set the color to black and the label to SMA 50. And finally, to display the chart, I will say plt.legend. Oops, look like I forgot an equal sign. I'm sure you guys saw it. Let's give it another try, and this time it works. As you can see, we have a chart with BTC prices and the 50 moving average. This was a simple example, but it shows you how powerful this thing could be. This tutorial is almost done, but before I leave you guys, I want to show you a common problem with this setup and the solution for it. When running Python processes like we just did, whether using the terminal app or VS Code's built-in terminal, one common problem is that sometimes you close the terminal session, whether intentionally or accidentally, but the process keeps running in the background. So the next time that you try to run the same command, it will fail, saying that the port is already in use by another process. There are a couple of ways to solve this problem. My solution is to use a tool called Screen, which gives you better control over your terminal sessions. Here, let me show you. You can install a Screen on your server by running apt install -y screen. In my case, it's already installed. And now, instead of executing Jessie run directly, first I will create an screen. I can do that by saying screen -uppercase S, and then I pass in a name, which makes reattaching easier. For this process, I will name it Jessie, and now I'm actually inside a new screen window. So if I execute Jessie run in here and close my terminal windows entirely, I can later on open another terminal and reattach to the same window. And to do that, I will execute screen -r and pass in the name of that window, which was Jessie. And I can just continue as if I never closed the terminal at all. Now let's create another terminal window for Jupyter. Screen -uppercase S, and I will name it Jupyter. And to run Jupyter, I will execute Jupyter lab. Then again, I have to pass the allow root flag. And then I can copy and paste this URL inside my browser to use Jupyter. But sometimes when you're running the process inside a screen window, the port binding of VS Code doesn't work anymore. So what I can do here is to replace localhost with the external IP address of my server. The reason this isn't working now is because when I started Jupyter, I didn't specify a host address specifically. So by default, it uses localhost. But to access the application using an external address, I need to either specify the IP address, or to allow it to serve the application to all addresses, I can pass in 4 zeros. So I'm gonna stop the session, enter Y. So this time, after writing the same command, I will pass in the IP option with the value of 0000. Now it doesn't matter which URL I copy because I will be changing the hostname either way. Now I'm gonna paste in the IP address of my server, and this time it should work. Let's do the same for Jessie's dashboard, and it works perfectly. That's it for this tutorial. This was just about the installation of the remote dev environment. If you want to see examples of me using Jessie's research module, make sure to subscribe because I will be making videos about that. Thanks for watching.